What's the name of it? Duval County. Have we seen it decided anywhere but Duval County?
I don't know how common it is, but I think we would agree that's a problem if it's happening. If there's more registered voters than there are eligible voters, that would be a problem.
Do you represent Duval County?
No, sir.
Okay. So, that's down south, brother, your way. So has it existed anywhere else in the state of Texas but Duval County? Have we seen this?
I'm not sure if Senator Betancourt was making a historical reference to Box 13 and George Parr, or if he meant in particular Duval County. But I think we can agree that if there were more registered voters than there were eligible voters, we'd want to look at that, wherever it is, urban or rural or north or south.
Senator Zaffarina says she represents it. But it hasn't been an ongoing thing across our state, has it?
I don't know. I know that if there's a county that shows more registered voters than eligible voters, we need to know about it. And
I don't disagree with the question is, I agree with your, if that happens, but have we experienced that in Texas?
I don't know what the exact numbers are. I don't know the answer to that. I don't believe it's happened. I don't believe it's happened in my district. But
then why is it in your bill? If you don't know if it even existed, then why is it in your bill?
Well, Senator, this is in the Conference Committee report. This is a compromise between the House and the Senate. This was not in what we sent out of the Senate before.
Okay, but you accepted it back when it came from the House?
Nobody gets everything they want. It's a compromise. Or at least I don't get everything I want. I shouldn't say nobody does, but I don't get everything I want.
Let me go to Article 6, and let me just read line 15 through 20. A person who simultaneously assists 3 or more voters voting under this section by providing the voters with transportation to the polling place must complete sign a form provided by an election officer that contains a person's name, address, and whether the person is providing assistance solely under this section or under both this section and subsection B. Did I read that right?
Yes, sir.
You want to comment before I comment? It's like you want to say something.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm on page 37. I'm with you. So I just want to make sure we're looking at the same place.
Again, can you tell me the origin of what I just read?
You bet. So this is the situation where you're driving 3 or more voters not related to you, and they need curbside assistance. They need to have the election machines brought out to the car, and you're providing them assistance. So that's what this is about. And again, the Attorney General's office has told us there's been testimony that you'll have these voters, and they'll call at the end of Election Day, and they'll say, hey, this guy offered me a ride to the polling place, and I went with him, and they brought me this machine, and he told me how to vote. And that's not how I wanted to vote. And I didn't know who he was, if he was official. What do I do? This happens. Senator, I'm answering your question. This happens. And so the point of this provision is if you're driving 3 or more people not related to you and they all need curbside assistance, then we want to know your name and address. So if we get those complaints, we know who to call.
Senator Hughes, let me say respectfully, you really have no idea and no realistic vision of how things work in my neighborhood, and in neighborhoods like mine, okay? Everybody doesn't have access to cars. The block will help one another get to polling places because that's how important it is to us. What you're putting in this bill and trying to pass for the state of Texas is going to cause mayhem at polling places. Because I can assure you, there's nobody in my community going to go through this red tape and all these problems to get Miss Betsy to the polling place. To get, it may have 3 generations in one household, and the neighbor from down the street may be the one who's taken 3 different generations of that same household. It's not going to work. It's not reality. It's just not reality, Senator.
And Senator, this is only if they need all of them need curbside assistance, and none of them are kin.
Yes. Yes, that happens in our community. And you're taking that privilege away from us.
No, sir.
You're making it harder.
No, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're making it harder for people to get of color to cast their vote.
No, sir, we're not.
Yes, you are. Have you ever experienced racism or discrimination?
Have I ever experienced?
Have you ever experienced racism or discrimination, you personally, of any kind?
I don't know that I have. I don't know that I have.
Let me ask you this.
I think there are people that might treat me differently, but I'm not aware of.
Obviously, you haven't. Let me ask you this: if you had a transportation bill or had questions about transportation, who on this floor would you go to?
Well, transportation.
Mm-hmm. Transportation.
So Senator Nichols is normally the transportation guy.
If you had a question about education, which senator would you go to on this floor?
Well, he's not. Senator Taylor is chairs that committee.
That's right. And if you had a question dealing with anything with veterans or the Constitution, who would you go to on this floor?
Now that's a tough one because we got to chair the Veterans
or
Committee.
Constitution?
We got to chair the Veterans Committee, Senator Campbell, and then we got some veterans like Senator. Well, we got Senator Birdwell, Senator Blanco.
Okay,
I'm missing some veterans. I apologize.
I guess we can call them subject experts.
All right.
Correct?
All right.
Why didn't you talk to any of the minority of this body before you wrote and filed this bill? Because the same way you go to them on special issues, because you just admitted you don't know anything about racism or discrimination.
You asked me if I had experienced it personally. I don't think I have.
And you said no.
I don't believe I have.
Okay. So why didn't you convey or talk to any one of us that this bill is really going to affect?
Senator, in my district, I have a county commissioner under criminal indictment for mail ballot fraud. He happens to be a Democrat. The claim was brought against him by a Democrat. They happen to be African American. But it doesn't matter because this applies to everyone across the board. Senator, I'll say this. We had testimony before the committee from Hispanic folks. We had a district attorney, elected Democrat district attorney, testified about this very thing with mail ballots. So respectfully, Senator, this is coming from complaints from people across the board of all races, of all parties, of all parts of the state.
Senator Hughes, respectfully.
This is my district.
Respectfully, my brother. As a body, when we're drafting bills, we're putting something together as important as this. We rely on the expertise, a lot of times on the expertise we have on this floor. But in this particular incident, in this particular bill, SB 7, we weren't even part of the conversation.
Senator, there's a hearing that takes place. There's testimony on the floor. Changes were made to this bill based on discussions you and I had and Senator Alvarado and I had. Of course, we're part of the discussion.
I heard you tell Senator Alvarado that, but I can't think of one thing that I've mentioned to you that's been changed. Can you?
Senator, you and I talked about the polling places, about the early voting locations, and that has been completely removed from this bill.
We talked about the early voting locations. What do we talk about the early voting locations?
Well, you may recall when Senate Bill 7 left here, there's a requirement that in counties of 1 million or more, some of those are Republican, some are Democrat, but counties of 1 million or more, those early voting locations had to be evenly distributed based on voting population. And there were a lot of concerns from members about that. Senator Alvarado and I discussed it probably at greatest length, but a number of other members mentioned it as well. And that is not in the conference committee report. That's been completely removed. We also talked about poll watchers and poll watchers having cameras and making recordings. In fact, several senators had questions about that and what effect that might have. That provision has been completely removed in this conference committee report. Those are a couple of big examples. Senator, I would say respectfully of the matters we debated, those were two of the biggest ones and two of the greatest concern from our colleagues, and those are out of the bill.
And I'm going to say, I respectfully do not recall having a conversation with you about early voting locations. You may have had it with my colleague, Senator Alvarado, but you did not have it with me, sir. Respectfully.
Did we talk about poll watchers and cameras? I thought we did, and if you say we didn't, I believe you.
Thank you, sir. You know, Senator Hughes, every day we walk into this chamber with all these so-called Confederate heroes hanging. And over again, this session, legislation has been passed that is harmful to people of color, black and brown. And you can disguise it and frame it any way you want to. But I'm sure everyone in this room is familiar with the old saying, no matter what color lipstick you put on a pig, it's still a damn pig. SB 7 is nothing more than a suppression piece of legislation. That's all it is. And I take honor in representing my district. And I take honor, Royce, in being a voice for my district. And I'm going to tell you what my district considers SB 7. And y'all are going to disagree, including Lieutenant Governor. But my district, where I'm from, where I'm elected to be a voice in this chamber, they do call it and refer to it as Jim Crow 2.0. And they do ask me every time I'm in the neighborhood, is this 2021? Or is this 1961? And why are we allowing people to roll back the hands of time? So again, Brother Hughes, I'm going to close by saying thank you for bringing SB 7, this horrible bill, forward. And I want everybody that can hear me, that's watching this morning, especially the black and brown, old, but especially our young folks, we're not going to let this bill deter us. We're going to get motivated by this bill. We're going to know more than ever that it's time for us to fight, to push ourselves and each other, to show up and show out at the ballot box in spite of this legislation. And Brother Hughes, as I close, you kicked the bear, as I said earlier this session. Now you're about to hear the bear roar. So thank you for bringing this horrible bill to the voters of the state of Texas. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator.